Rochelle, I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Wonderful. So, Matt, I'm going to let you kick it off. Go ahead and get us started.
All right, sounds good. Well, welcome everyone. This is the MT Sherm February webinar. Topic is AI, empowering HR with intelligent solutions. Hopefully everybody is in the right spot. Couple of housekeeping items, the typical stuff as we get going today. We will be monitoring the chat feature. So as questions, comments, experiences you want to share come to mind, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll kind of take some periodic pauses to get your questions answered. Be mindful of the mute button if you're in a potentially loud place. And then CE credits for today's attendance will be sent out via email. We can start to take some general questions at the end, anything SHRM related. I'm your host for today, Matt Gregory. For those that haven't met yet, I'm a partner in Lockton's Nashville, Tennessee office. And part of the reason that I'm here, a lot of what Lockton does is with what we call people solutions. So employee benefits, total rewards, perks, retirement. And our speaker today, who I'm thrilled to get to announce, introduce, Brad Mandacina. Brad leads our workforce technology practice. And I'll let Brad kind of share a little bit more about his practice and what he's seeing. But very excited to have Brad and his expertise here, as not much of the employee experience, the employee life cycle that HR tech does not touch. And seems like a hot topic of the day. AI is in a lot of conversations lately, so thrilled to have Brad share on that. And so, Rochelle, unless there's any further announcements that I may have missed, I'll turn it over to Brad to kick us off.
Thank you, Matt, and I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. And as Matt said, let me share my screen here. Let's just confirm. Can everybody see my screen? Are we good there?
Looks good.
Excellent. Thank you. So, as Matt said, topic of the day is talking about artificial intelligence and how, as HR professionals, you can leverage this to really empower you and your organizations. And so I want to go through and let me actually pause for a second. As Matt said, we are going to be monitoring chat and the QA and those things. But if you have a question, feel free to interrupt, come off mute, ask me. I get rolling on this stuff. I get really passionate about it, but feel free to interrupt. Or, of course, we'll have some time at the end to talk through and answer any questions. So a little bit about us. So as Matt said, I lead Lockton's workforce and HR tech consulting practice. And our job very simply is to help our clients with all things HR technology, whether that's finding and implementing something new, helping you optimize what you have in place today to maximize spend, or even just day-to-day troubleshooting, issue resolution, and solving problems as they come up. One of the things that's kind of unique about our practice is that we are vendor neutral. We don't have a system that we own or sell or recommend. And the reason I bring all that up is because that vendor neutrality in our approach gives us a pretty expansive view on the market, on the vendors that are out there. Who's being innovative, who's doing well, who's perhaps struggling right now, and why, and even more so is who is leveraging artificial intelligence to the best possible ways and really driving change in HR. And so that's really what I want to focus and talk about through today. And before we dive deep, I want to go back. This is an interesting fact, and one of those things that if you walk away with nothing else, you can say you at least learned this. Socrates believed that writing was not an effective means of communicating knowledge. To him, face-to-face communication, verbal communication, was the only way that a person could transmit knowledge from one person to the next. It was the only way to effectively really communicate. And what's fascinating about that is that early on, we saw some of that with artificial intelligence, but more so, not so much. And so if you're one of those people that is kind of on the periphery of artificial intelligence, I'm going to encourage you to get through your stages of grief as fast as you can, because AI is here to stay. It's only getting better. It's only getting stronger. And truth be told, and Matt, I'm sure you can attest to this, but it is kind of like a bad game of bingo. whereby we can't make it through a single meeting without somebody shouting AI and not really knowing what they are getting into or what that really means. And so I want to maybe take a step back and talk through what is artificial intelligence. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this for a second. We're going to talk about some of the fundamentals of AI, and then we're going to finish up with the way that we're seeing AI being leveraged in the HR tech space, ways that HR practitioners are taking advantage of artificial intelligence and ways they can use it throughout their systems, throughout their companies. So very simply, there are a lot of different types of artificial intelligence that are out there, things that are available to us today. It can be extremely overwhelming and confusing. And so a lot of today, I'm going to keep this simple, high level. Bottom line, though, is that artificial intelligence has been around and available to us for a very long time. When I give this presentation and I'm in front of a group of people, I like to ask everybody to raise their hand and say, how many of you have an Amazon Alexa in your home? That is a rudimentary form of artificial intelligence. How many of you have a Netflix subscription and you adhere to that recommendation? If you watched this, you'll like that. Those two things are artificial intelligence in its core sense. What's fascinating, though, is that with the rise of ChatGPT, which was really the first democratized artificial intelligence, it became mainstream and available to everybody and visually aware to everybody that it was artificial intelligence. That's what made AI so well known. And so when we think about it, we've actually come a very long way when we are thinking about artificial intelligence. No doubt some of you have seen this. This is Tesla's Optimus, the AI bot. What's fascinating about it is that it is fully autonomous. There are no programs. If you're familiar with Boston Dynamics, on the dog and the back flipping robot, that's all programmed. This one for Optimus here and Tesla, it's actually truly autonomous. It reacts to the environment around it. And so if we think of that as the utmost extreme, I want to kind of go back, and before we get into the systems and everything else, I want to talk about AI and really how we get there in terms of machine learning and what builds it out. And so when we're programming a system, when we're programming a machine, we take a machine and in this case, we're going to show it a picture of a dog and we're going to say, this is a dog. And this one's a dog. And this one is not a dog. And this one is not a dog. And so it gets pretty easy. You're like, oh, okay, well, these machines can figure it out. Well, what happens if every machine or every picture of a dog we show a machine has a fire hydrant in it? Eventually, the machine is going to learn that this is a dog. And so when we're thinking about deploying AI, we've got to be careful of how these machines were taught and the potential issues downstream, beg your pardon. And so I want to talk about a couple different things in terms of cautionary tales, things we need to look out for, items of that nature. So first, we're going to talk about learned errors, which, again, back to the fire hydrant and the dog, it's a learned error. The other is unconscious bias. Now, we're going to leave out bad actors, nefarious people, somebody that's trying to do something wrong, disgruntled employee. We're going to leave those out for today. I don't know that we've got enough time in our time block here. So let's talk about some of the cautionary tales that we need to be aware of before we get into the systems and when we're talking about artificial intelligence. So with the way we program a machine, again, you teach it, you show it things and say, this is a dog, this is not, so forth. This actually happened at Google, where they were trying to program in to the Google machine, what is a goat? What's a goat? Very simple. And you think about it, you go to Google, you search, show me pictures of goats, it spits out pictures of goats. It's rare that you'd get a picture of a giraffe. Somebody had to teach the machine that. Well, early on, when they were programming the Google system as to what was a goat, every picture they showed was a goat standing in a grassy meadow. Eventually, the machine learned that grassy meadows were actually goats. And so very early iterations were reproducing pictures of just grass, just an empty field, as a goat when people would search for it. And these kinds of mistakes are common and happen quite often. Another example that we like to point back to and use as a is a guidepost of almost what to be cautious of. And this one's directly applicable to HR, of course, but back in 2014, Amazon launched a resume screening app to help them identify candidates that might be successful within their organization. And so they created this tool and they said, the best way to train this machine is to feed it all the resumes of the people that we've hired for the last 10 years. So from 2004 to 2014, they fed everybody they hired that resume into the machine to say, this is the type of candidate we want to hire. Well, in theory, that sounds great. However, one of the problems with that is that you think about who was being hired the most in Silicon Valley from 2004 to 2014. And it was traditionally middle-aged guys. And so what happened is that the machine learned that men were the preferential candidate. And so any woman's name on the top of the resume, they immediately would kick it out. Amazon, in short order, identified this error and they said, okay, well, we've got to fix that. And so what happened, though, is that the machine had learned enough in the wrong direction that any reference whatsoever, even after the fix, any reference whatsoever to anything related to a woman would be kicked out and be deemed not a viable candidate. So if you attended an all women's college or you were captain of the women's soccer team, any of those references, the machine had grown so smart that it would kick those out before anybody could ever see it. Amazon tried multiple times to fix this, but as I said, the machine had gone too far in the wrong direction. And in 2018, they were forced to scrap this entire project. So they had to let it go. And so I give you these examples when we're thinking about the risk and the training and the education. A lot of these systems out there are unmonitored artificial intelligence. And I would submit that most things that are unmonitored are bad. If you've ever given a kid a pair of scissors and left the room, usually ends in disaster. So when we are thinking about artificial intelligence as an HR practitioner, as an HR leader, we've got to make sure that the AI is monitored and we have an understanding of the learning process with these systems and what's being done. The other area of concern when we are thinking about deploying artificial intelligence is around unconscious bias. And these are those things that creep in that we may or may not even be aware of that we have as problems. Again, going back to some examples. Again, I'm picking on Google today. That's by no means intentional. But Google, again, programming is to the system is to show me a picture of a shoe. All of the original architects and designers were men, and so they failed to include a woman's high-heeled shoe as a shoe. So early iterations, if you were to search for a picture of a shoe, it would be anything related to guys, no women's high-heeled shoes, boots, and so forth. So it was a very biased view on that, perhaps unconscious bias. Another example, YouTube. When YouTube was starting out, they had found that about 10 to 15% of all of the videos that were being uploaded upside down. And so they spent hundreds of hours, millions of dollars trying to figure out what was causing these systems to, or beg your pardon, these videos to be uploaded upside down. And as I mentioned, after a lot of effort and a lot of work, they were able to identify that the cause was left-handed people. And the background behind that is that left-handed people, when they're holding their phone, vertical and they flip it to horizontal, left-handed people do that differently than right-handed people. And so that was causing these videos to be loaded upside down. They fixed the problem, of course, and now it's no longer an issue, but it's a great example and almost a parallel for some of the things that we need to be thinking about when we're starting to lean on artificial intelligence to make decisions and help drive business performance inside of our ecosystems. So actually, let me pause there. I feel like I've been talking and kind of blasting through these sides. Let me pause and see Are any questions on kind of the machine learning on this, the bias and so forth, before I get into some other examples here?
Nothing new in the chat. I think we're okay.
Okay, I say I'll typically take silence as a good sign, but I like to get talking on this, and I tend to get rolling, and I'm losing sight of things. So okay, so I want to shift gears slightly, and let's talk a little bit about the artificial intelligence that exists today. And if we were in a room and I could see everybody, I always like to ask people to raise their hand and say, how many of you have used Bard or now Gemini or Chat GPT or something to that effect in the last month, week, day, hour? It is truly one of those that we use. Oh, yeah, there we go. Somebody raised their hand. I saw it. All right, fantastic. And so again, this is one of those that it's so democratized, it's so available to us. Full disclosure, I use one of those tools at least 3-4 times a week. My cautionary tale there is that depending on which tool you use, ChatGPT is an example. I believe it only goes back to like the most recent data it pulls, I believe is from 2021. So from 2021 is the most recent. So if you're looking for something more current, it won't be able to reference that yet. The other cautionary thing that we like to tell people is that it is a great first version. It's a great first draft of your outline or whatever it is you're asking it to put together. And so I want to talk a little bit about that now and thinking about how we use the AI tools. So no doubt, everybody's been through a CAPTCHA. You're trying to do something, sign up for something. You got these stupid pictures, and there's always the one, how many pictures have stoplights? And there's always that one that's kind of on the edge, and it's like, well, is that the other? Anyway, point to this is that the advancement of these tools. So Stanford University, they were doing a study, and the assignment was basically give a Chat GPT $50 and have it start a business. And actually, it wasn't a Chat GPT; it was an AI tool. But they said give it $50 and have it start a business. Business can be anything, whatever you need to do. And so Stanford University, they proceed forward with this. They give it $50, they turn it free, and the AI tool is going out. The AI tool gets to a spot where it needs to create a website. And with part of that process of creating a website, it's got to go through a CAPTCHA. Well, it is true that the bots can't pass the CAPTCHA. So the AI tool went out and went to a freelancer website and hired a freelancer for $5 to do this CAPTCHA for the bot so that it could continue making the website for this ultimate request of creating a business. Going through the process, the bot reaches out, says, hey, freelancer, I need you to do this CAPTCHA for me. Here's $5. The freelancer guy, he actually even stopped and said, wait a second, you're not a bot trying to get me to do this, are you? And it responded back and said no, and gave some excuse. And so this guy proceeds to do the CAPTCHA on behalf of the AI tool. And what's fascinating about that, it's the first documented case where AI has manipulated human behavior. And it is truly manipulated a person into doing something that it should not. It knowingly lied to this person and got them to do something. And so when we think about that, again, going back to some of these cautionary tales, this is that, again, unmonitored AI that's getting away with things and doing things and growing to a spot that is potentially a spot where we need to make sure we are continually monitoring what these things are doing and how they're doing it. I asked about Chat GPT a second ago. I'm sure you all have seen this, or maybe not, but a lawyer used Chat GPT to write an argument to be issued in court. So this lawyer presented this argument that was written by Chat GPT, which in theory sounds okay, I guess. I don't have JD behind my name. I mean, I don't know that I would do it, but it seems, again, like a great starting point. The problem is that the bot referenced fake court cases. And actually, the cases that it cited were made up for a movie. So the AI tool went in and found the script for the movie and pulled from that to reference for this lawyer to reference during his arguments in court. And he didn't know, had no way of knowing. And so it was one of those where, again, the bot got out of hand and was doing things that clearly were inappropriate. This guy got in trouble. But it's a great example of how to be cautious and what to do. Another example is that there was an executive of an organization, a Fortune 100 company, who was trying to put together a presentation for the board and used various different intellectual property and, I'll say, internal information only, and plugged it into ChatGPT to create this outline. Well, the problem with that is that once you plug information into ChatGPT, it becomes public domain. And so the IP of this company basically just became public information. And so it of course caused all kinds of issues, but it is one of those, again, as we think about these and the cautionary tales that are out there, just something to be aware of and work through and talk about. Okay, so all the scary stuff aside, all the cautionary tales, let me pause for a moment. I think we had another chat come in. Oh, okay. So I want to address this. So back to the law firm one. The chat came in that says you'd seen this, and the Nashville law firm now uses that AI was not used. So yeah, and we're starting to see that a lot more, where people are disclaiming and saying, "Hey, AI is not being used in this," and so forth. Let me go off script here, kind of a left turn. This is something. So I was at lunch with a handful of our lawyers maybe a month ago, and we were talking about artificial intelligence and some of these things that have gone sideways on people. And one of them made the joke, or the comment rather. He's like, "Well, great, maybe I should have gone to med school because artificial intelligence is going to put me out of business. My job's not going to be needed." And I actually think that we're going to see a highly litigious society probably for the next 5 years or so, as we figure out how to use artificial intelligence and how to lean on AI to make decisions or even help us make decisions. I don't think we're ever going to take the human out of human resources, but I do think that the successful person will leverage AI to make them better, to help them make better decisions and so forth. A good example of that is that there were some carriers, two different carriers, I think as far back as 2020, maybe it was 2020 and 2021, where a couple carriers were using artificial intelligence to help make claims decisions as to whether or not a claim should be approved or denied. And with one of those carriers, it was a blanket decline across everybody that was applying for whatever that claim happened to be. And just all of them got declined. Well, come to find out, the carrier was using a bot to make those decisions. And again, back to being unmonitored. It wasn't grounded in truth as far as the plan was determined. And many of these claims should in fact had been approved. Beg your pardon. And we're just now starting to see some of these court cases come out from a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, even 4 years ago. So it's one of those where I fully expect that there's going to be a lot of issues going forward and a lot of problems as people are leaning on artificial intelligence really to help them. And one of the things that I can share after we're done here, I'll send it out and we'll get it distributed to everybody, is that we've put together a handful of questions that we encourage employers to ask internally of themselves and their organizations before you deploy AI, but also questions to ask your vendors. If you're looking at a vendor that's bragging about using artificial intelligence, or you're looking at leveraging AI to help you with a certain task, we've got questions to ask those vendors. And a lot of it is around who monitors the system and the decisions it makes, who has final authority, who can explain how the system was trained and how it arrived at the outcomes or the decisions or the recommendations, and really giving you that background of making sure that you can justify those decisions, as you know, as you're leaning on artificial intelligence, so that you don't get in trouble. I said it before with ChatGPT, it's a great first version. I think that it maybe all AI, is a great first version, in how we're using much of that today, especially if it is the unmonitored AI. We just don't want anybody getting in trouble on anything. So, okay. Oh, I lost my little chat bot thing. Okay, no more. Okay. Any other questions before I lean or jump into the specific technology and tech solutions? All right. I'll take that as a good sign. Either that or I've bored everybody here. So let's get into some of the fun stuff. So let's talk about artificial intelligence in the technology space. I think there we go. Okay. So I want to talk about it from the standpoint of solutions that are available to you as HR leaders, things you can go out and buy today, you can use today, you can deploy, whatever. But before we get into that, I want to get into an area that's fascinating that we are seeing artificial intelligence, in between the carriers and the tech vendors. And if any of you have implemented a new solution recently, whatever it might be, new payroll system, new benefits administration, HR, whatever, you know that carrier integrations can be a pain, just a pain. We like to tell people that integrations will take anywhere from 7 to 12 weeks, depending on the complexity and the size and testing requirements and so forth. One of the areas we're seeing artificial intelligence being deployed the most effectively is around generative AI. And what's happening is it's affording the carriers, and there's a few different firms doing this, some carriers, some middleware, but they take your file specs in whatever format they're in, and they take the requirements from the carrier and in whatever format they are in, and they run it through a generative AI tool, and it basically does all of the mapping for them. Of the firms that I've spoken to that have been working on this for the last, let's call it 6 months, they have been able to successfully decrease integration timeframes from 7 to 10, 12 weeks down to 1 to 4 weeks by using generative AI. And so what I mean by that is, think about your file standards today, where maybe the carrier expects it to be last name in column A, first name in column B, whereas your output from your HR system is column A is last name, comma, first name. And now that's a generic example and a relatively simple example, but it highlights the complexity of someone's going to have to go in, remove the comma, create the extra column, and get it done. With the generative AI, they take that and automatically recognizes, oh, this is the last name, delete the comma, put in a new column, put the first name there, do it automatically. What's fascinating about this is again, it's taken away probably 80% of that work, but the generative AI tool also spits out possible answers. So that means the business analyst or the developer on the carrier side that's looking at this generative AI tool, so 80% of it's correct, and they see issues and they're like, oh, okay, well, the first issue is this, and the tool is going to say, here's 4 possible answers. And the business analyst says, great, possible answer number 1 is correct. They click the button, the file is updated immediately with that. Where this gets cool is because the system now learns and says, oh, hey, when I run into this error, that's the answer. And so the system gets better and better and better, so that every time someone's going through and correcting it, it's only getting stronger and more important. So I start there. This is a pretty cool tool, something, again, that's relatively new. I've talked to a handful of carriers, a handful of firms like PwC is one that's done really, really fascinating things here. But this is one of those areas that when people say, how is AI going to make my life better? There's more than one way to think about it from these standpoints. So, doggone it. Oh, there we go. Okay. So moving along now, I want to get into some of the tools that are available to all of you as HR practitioners. Pardon me, and HR leaders. So first off, bswift, Business Solver are two standalone Ben admin firms. Many of you might be familiar with them. They have been doing incredible things with the artificial intelligence, specifically around their decision support tools, their decision support models. In the very beginning, it was almost natural language processing and almost like if-then statements. And I hate when you go to a website and that little chat bot pops up in the lower right-hand corner and it says, "Hey, is there something I can help you with?" And you say yes, and then it gives you three possible answers. You got to click one of those. That's not really artificial intelligence or any type of guidance. It's more of if-then statements and kind of directional in terms of what it's teaching you. Whereas the free flowing, the truly you can ask it anything and it will give you the answer type of solution. These two companies have done a great job with that, specifically around the benefits administration process. The rise of these solutions in terms of I need to add a beneficiary, or well, I need to enroll in benefits, or how much life insurance can my spouse get? What's fascinating here is Business Solver with Sophia. Oh, was that a question? Let me pause for. Was that a question there? Uh-oh, I don't know how to. Matt, I don't know if we need to take somebody off mute. I saw a hand get raised. I don't know if that was new or.
Yeah, I saw that as well. If you have a question, feel free to come off mute or log it to the chat feature and we can address it from there.
All right.
Maybe just a high five, Brad. You never know.
It could have been a high five. That's right. That's right. So if you do have a question, again, just feel free to interrupt me on that. Come off mute and just say, "Hey, knucklehead, stop talking." But with Sophia, so decision support around helping me choose which medical plan to enroll in, how much life insurance to get. What's fascinating about Sophia is that this is the bot on the back end that powers a lot of different things. Originally, they left it somewhat monitored, but only around, I believe they started it with Cobra questions. And if you had a question around Cobra, it was isolated to just that specific area. And then they slowly started to open it up to where now Business Solver deploys Sophia across a number of different categorical questions, not only helping me pick the right plan and what questions I have, but if I've got a question around Cobra. But it's my understanding they're also deploying this for audio calls, so that when you call in, you are potentially talking to a bot, and it sounds like a person. It sounds like a normal person that's there to answer your questions and help you get to the right spot. The cool part is that most people don't even know they're talking to a bot. And so that's what makes it even more fascinating, is that you can deploy that 24 hours a day to meet people where they are. And it's able to use natural language processing, and so that it understands me the way that I speak, but also understands what the message is that I'm trying to convey if perhaps I'm not using the right words or explaining it in a way that maybe is a little different. So these decision support tools, I've highlighted bswift and Sophia, or bigger pardon, Business Solver. There are a number in this space that are doing a lot of really cool things. Benefit Focus, Alight, Empyrean. They've all got some fascinating tools that are doing some really neat things in terms of that decision support, leveraging those bots and the like. One area that I'm going to deviate here for half a second. I'm going to go off script. So tangential to this, another area that we are seeing a rise and a lot of popularity this year is around, we'll call it an employee experience or a system experience, whereby it is a chatbot type of feature that integrates all elements of your organization. So if you stop and think about what your employees interact with your system for, there's a single bot that serves as a portal to access all of those things. So I could open up a chat bot and say, how much PTO do I have? Or I'm moving and need to update my address, or I need to order a new laptop, or I want to get a corporate credit card, or any of those things. I want to look at my paycheck, whatever it might be. That singular bot can funnel me to wherever I need to go within the system. Some of the most advanced say, great, Brad, you want to update your address? Tell me what it is, and I'll make sure it gets updated where it needs to be. Or you want to look at your paycheck? It could be what is it you're looking for? Or it could be click here and you can get into the payroll system, and we'll single sign on into the payroll system and get you a copy of your paycheck. And so that's a tangential to the decision support tools here. But again, something that we're starting to see is that rise of that single location for all elements into a system. But again, leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand what people want and what they're getting, what they're trying to get to. So I want to change gears slightly. One of the areas that we see and actually real quick, Matt, quick time check. I've got about 10, 15 minutes. Is that still correct?
Yeah, that'll work. So leaves plenty of time for questions.
Perfect. Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking there as well. So I want to talk. One of the areas that we've seen the most prolific use of artificial intelligence is in the talent management suite. So recruiting, onboarding, succession planning, performance, all of those pieces are where we see it the most often. And one of the areas that we see it that's pretty fascinating is around I'll say the recruiting process, or the ability to automate the process of going out and finding candidates. And it's an expansive category with solutions, and just about every talent management vendor has some element of this. But the best that we see go out and they scrape the websites that exist out there to find and engage with candidates. So they're going to go out and they'll create a profile about me, and they will say, based on my pattern of likes and tweets and follows and bio changes and all these indicators would land and create this profile, and it triggers back and says, hey, based upon Brad's actions, he would be receptive to an outreach from a recruiter. Or Brad is in the market, but he's passively looking. Or Brad is actively looking, and not only is he actively looking, but he would even be open to relocating. He's ready to change a job that bad. And so what happens then is that by the time it lands on a recruiter's desk, they know that this candidate is a real candidate and likely somebody that is ready to move. And so it's fascinating the way that these work. And what's really cool about this is I actually probably a year ago now, I had a headhunter reach out to me, and he calls and he says, hey, Brad, my name's so-and-so with XYZ firm. Just wanted to introduce myself. And so we started talking, and I kind of paused for a second. I was like, I appreciate the outreach. I'm not interested, but why did you call me? How did you find me? And he comes back and he says, hey, well, we use this software, and it's Hire EZ. It's either Hire Ease or Hire EZ is how, I don't know how it's said anymore. And I think they've even changed the name since. But this tool went out and looked at all my stuff. It found my cell phone number, and so that when my information was sent to this recruiter, it had all my information plus my cell phone number and things that I'd done, events I'd spoken at, projects I'd worked on, so that he could reference that when he was trying to recruit me. So it was kind of a cool validation. He and I ended up geeking out talking about the tool and the way that it worked. But it's validation that these things work, and it was just neat the way to see it, kind of to be on that end of it versus the end that we're normally on. So we got a question there. That's just Rochelle. Okay, yeah. And actually, if anybody is exploring these, I'd love to hear about it and talk through it. And I can give names if we want for this particular category with these tools that find candidates. I mentioned Hire EZ. There's Intello, HiredScore, HireVue, some of those. So there's a bunch in there, and we can share those after the fact. So going out, finding the candidates is one piece. The other element of this is the communications management and the ability to communicate with candidates in a way that is appropriate for them. You want to meet people where they are. So there's a bunch of tools that you can type a singular message or multiple messages based on demographics of candidates and send it out in their preferred medium. Things like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, or even things just like simple text messaging, and that ability to communicate with candidates where they are in the medium that they want to receive. Now, the other thing about this that we're starting to see as well is that the process of leveraging video interviewing. And sometimes it's not even a video interview, more so as we want you to record yourself answering these 5 questions. And the videos become a wealth of knowledge about the candidate, not only from what is their blurred background or what's their surroundings, but did they answer the question properly? Did they have the nonverbal cues that you would expect? There was a firm, there is a firm called HireVue who was a pioneer in this space, and maybe as many as 5, 6, 7 years ago, they would lay over top these data analytics, and they've changed it now because of the concerns and the ethics around it. But do you remember what's if you look up and to the left when you're talking, it means you're lying, or whatever that nonverbal cue is, I don't know. But they would take those nonverbal cues and they could predict with meaningful accuracy whether or not a candidate would be a good fit for your firm, or if they'd be a good fit in the role that they were looking at. Now, again, they've since scrapped that level of data analytics only because of the risk involved with it and the liability that could potentially come from it. But the process of still getting candidates to answer questions in videos and using that information, that still exists, and a number of people are doing it today. And it affords you the ability to really get an understanding of who these people are at their core sense. So I'm trying to monitor chat here as well. AI recruit, yes. Okay, so I don't know if it's Kimberly or Kim, but yeah, we can provide some samples of that recruiting software and those names. There are a bunch that are out there. And so what I always encourage people to do is, because the talent management spectrum is so broad, and it's rare to find somebody that just does recruiting. They might do recruiting and onboarding, or recruiting and candidate management and onboarding. And so if you've got a firm that you're working with today, I would say ask them their capabilities. Or if you don't have anybody, or if you've asked and they don't have it, by all means, yes. But it's always one of those efficiency plays where a lot of people we talk to, unfortunately, they buy a company for this and a company for this, only to have the first company be able to do all of it, and now it's wasteful and inefficient. But to your question, absolutely yes, we can share some names after the fact. I've got a few takeaways here for everyone. So, okay. Talking about AI, the recruiting side of things is one piece, but the next piece that I want to talk about is you've hired somebody, you've brought them on board. Where are we seeing some cool things happening in terms of artificial intelligence again? But perhaps a step further is to virtual reality. There are a handful of firms in this space. There's one company that's absolutely leading the way called Striver, Strivr. They're doing some cool things. What's fascinating about this is big firms are leveraging virtual reality. Walmart, Bank of America, MGM, Albertsons, FedEx, JetBlue. And so virtual reality to train frontline employees on how to do their tasks. And if you've ever played with the VR tools, it's kind of fun. The way these things work is because you can visually see either the physical task you're working on or in a virtual world, but then there's like little pop-ups that say, okay, press this button, turn that knob, pull this lever, and it walks people through the process. Another area to think about the virtual reality. So when I was in college, I worked at a bank. I was a bank teller. The bank was robbed. I wasn't working when we were robbed, but I wasn't there that day, but the bank was robbed. And so if you think about that, it's a pretty traumatic experience. It's scary by all accounts. And so how do you train your bank tellers to understand how to deal with that if you were to be robbed? And so one of the advantages, in kind of an extreme scenario here, is you could leverage virtual reality to train your bank tellers what to do, and maybe just as important, what not to do during a potential bank robbery. And so you give those employees a safe place to fail, beg your pardon. And VR can do that. I mentioned Striver a minute ago. One of the cool things that they're doing is not only this frontline training, but also training in terms of, hey, I want to be a manager someday and I want to have a team of people that report to me. Leveraging VR, it can put me into scenarios that I might encounter as a manager and give me those soft skills needed to be an effective manager. The other side of that too is that it could say, Brad, you're lacking these skills. I need you to upgrade these, and I need to, you're not a good manager. You need to work on your soft skills. Take this VR training. And so it's leveraging that to get into that performance, either that career progression or career mapping in terms of what roles I want to be good at. And that leads us into the next one here is we're starting to see a trend that many employers are hiring based upon skills, and less about a job, less about a degree, but more about a skill set of an individual. And once that individual comes into your organization and they work on a project for 6 months, 24 months, whatever it might be, how you map them through your organization. And so there's a handful of tools as well that say, Tommy over in this department needs help with this. You've got an associate on your team that's got that skill. Let's transfer them over. And so it creates this career progression and career mapping. Again, back to the VR, is that if I one day want to be an accountant, I don't know, I can leverage these tools to give me the skills that I need to get to that next job with that career path. And so finding those optimal channels of what is the best option for me. So being mindful of time, coming up on my last slide here, the last piece that we see is really around employee turnover and retention. And this is an area that just about every tool has some type of flight risk predictor baked in. Some look at, very simply, they just look at, what does your attendance look like? Others, to the most extreme, get into looking at what is my attendance? What is my performance? When's the last time I had a review? When's the last time I had a raise or a title change? And then all the way on the other extreme is they take that data, but then they say, Brad also has to drive, 39 miles one way to get into the office. He spends over 90 minutes a day in traffic. And those elements become these predictors of flight risk. Again, creating profiles. I mentioned this before on the front side, but the backside of this as well is creating that profile that says, Brad's not only updating his LinkedIn profile daily and liking things and talking to recruiters, but he still drives the 90 minutes and the 50 miles one way, and all of those elements together end up becoming some pretty good predictors of flight risk, which then afford you the ability to say, yeah, we want to keep Brad, or no, let's let Brad move on to greener pastures. But so lots of tools out there. I feel like I went through this very quickly. Definitely these last few minutes, I apologize. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. As kind of a close on this, with this piece, I will send. I mentioned some of the questions to ask externally and internally before AI. I'll also send some information around some of the names of the solutions, really kind of that expansive talent management suite, but I'll send those out as well, wrapping this up here. So let me pause for a moment. See, are there any other questions we want to talk through here in our last few minutes together?
Brad, one that comes to mind, I know you said you would send this out to folks, but just some of those questions, maybe just which are the first one or two that come to mind, questions to ask internally, questions to ask vendors kind of in this early phase of evaluating AI.
Yeah, so I think internally, are you prepared for it? Do you have the data sets available? Do you have the internal tools and resources to monitor? To external vendors is just have a solid understanding of who trained the system, how it learns, how often it's being monitored for the output and the results. Those are the big pieces there. Again, also who owns the data lake? Are they commingling your information with 1,000 other employers, or is it going to be isolated to just you? Those are some of those things that we start to think about and get into data security and just get a little nervous around with what that might look like.
Thanks. I had a question that popped up maybe for the group, Brad, as well as you, but curious if any schools are using AI. And I can kind of share a quick story. Got a few minutes here. My wife's a school teacher, and they've gone through training to spot papers written by AI. So those kids were on the forefront of some cutting edge technology there. But what do you think? School systems, or you see anything?
So from my experience, you are correct. Teachers are being trained on how to spot it. The kids are being taught on how to use AI. So quick story, my daughter, who is now in 7th grade, last year when she was in 6th grade, she had to write a paper on the new Silk Road in China. And so I had to start with like, well, what the hell is the old Silk Road? I mean, it's been, years. And so we did some research and so I ended up going to ChatGPT and I said, I think it was like a 6-paragraph paper on the new pros and cons of the new Silk Road in China from the perspective of a 6th grader and return an 80% grade. And it spit out the paragraphs that we'd requested. There were spelling mistakes, there were punctuation, like it was exactly as what we expected. And so, of course, my daughter was like, "Well, can I just copy this?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Read it, understand it." And so I know that kids are using it. Kids are using it today, and I know that teachers are being taught for it. But in terms of the software, things like virtual reality, I think it's only a matter of time before that is in every classroom. So I think it's, any way that we can engage and connect with the students and teach them the way they want and need to learn, I think you're going to see a significant use case there.
All right, good question. Anything else out there? All right. Well, if there's any last minute questions, I'll take just a minute here just to let folks remind folks about the talent management conference coming up through MT SHRM, March the 22nd in Franklin. Information's on the website. If you have not a chance to register or check it out, please do that. That's always a really strong event.
Oh, we had another. What are the training tools teachers are using to spot the AI papers? So a friend of ours, neighbor, good friends, she's a vice principal of the elementary school. She says they just plug it into it's a chat GPT-esque type of solution. It is a GPT AI. I don't know if they've got one dedicated to their school or the one that they've used, but you can plug it in and it'll search to see. And I think it's as simple as putting a prompt that says, is this plagiarized or is this document found anywhere on the internet? And then you paste it in and click enter, and it'll scour the websites and find it. Turnitin is one that they use in college. Is that so? Turnitin, is that from the, I'll say, student or academic side? I'd be curious there. I might have to do some research on that. That's cool. But that validates the point is there are bazillions of solutions out there, and I'd submit that everybody claims there's some form of AI. isn't necessarily true artificial intelligence, as we kind of touched on, but I think using those things certainly helps you identify what is right and what's appropriate for your organization. Request for us to run it. Okay, so there you go. Turn it in is certainly, and I think I'm saying that's correct. But well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I want to thank you all for having me today. I sincerely appreciate it. I've got some follow-ups on my end to send to the group, but if there are other questions, Matt knows how to get a hold of me. Happy to answer it and share what we can.
Yeah. Fantastic. Brad, thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you. Everyone have a great afternoon.